everyone, I'm Anna. Today I'm going to show you guys how to take care of a hamster. Has anyone owned a hamster before? By show of hands. Does anyone currently own a hamster? Okay, cool. I've owned 3 hamsters. I've owned a Syrian hamster, his name was Rafiki, and then I've owned 2 dwarf hamsters named Tom and Jerry. This next picture is of Jerry. He was a dwarf hamster. Just for reference, that bowl is about this big. He was really, really small. He was about 2 weeks old in that picture. And this was his casket. It says on the go, not anymore. The next picture is of Tom. As you can see, he only has one eye, and his modeling skills are just absolutely incredible. He's the last hamster that is still with me. Next slide. He's just, at this point, he's the lone survivor. Today I'm going to be covering what cage to get your hamster, what toys to get your hamster, what to avoid, and how to tame your hamster. So if you're going to get a hamster, he's going to need a place to live. So we're going to start with what cage to get your hamster. Usually when people go to the pet store, they get the basic wire cage. And I'm going to tell you why this is the worst possible cage you can get your hamster. Number one, it's way too small. Hamsters need at least 450 square inches of floor space so they can do all the things they like to do, and you can't do that in this cage. Number two, it's just not deep enough. Hamsters need at least 6 inches of bedding in their cage because in the wild they like to burrow and build different tunnels and chambers, and they can't do that in this cage. Number three, it's way too stressful. Because this cage is so small and they can't burrow, they get really stressed, and oftentimes they'll either chew on the bars and it rubs against their nose, they can mess up their nose, or they'll climb the bars and they can fall and get really injured. So instead of that kind of cage, you're going to want to get a big bin like this. I got this one from Target. It's 18 inches tall, and I have about 10 inches of bedding in there for Tom. So now that you have a cage, you want to get different toys to get your hamsters. So first off, you want to get a wheel, and just like getting a cage that's too small, people often make the mistake of getting a wheel that's too small. As you can see in this picture, this hamster, while he's running, his back is really arched, and that's just not good for their spine. And you also want to avoid getting wire wheels because they can get their legs caught in the wheel and it can break a limb. So instead you want to get a big plastic wheel like this in the next slide. And this is Tom modeling for us yet again. You want to get a wheel that's a lot bigger than the hamster so he has room to run with a flat spine so it doesn't injure their back, because you wouldn't want to run with an arched back, and neither does your hamster. You also want to get them toys to chew on because just like beavers, their teeth are constantly growing and they need stuff to chew on to keep their teeth from getting overgrown. This first thing is just a treat bar. It's a stick with some treats on it, and then this is a log for Tom to chew on so his teeth don't get too overgrown. Now that you have toys and a wheel, you want to make sure you have the right bedding for your hamster. This is what I use. I found that other beddings are just too dusty and they've made my hamster sneeze, so I like to go with this. You want to avoid getting aspen or pine bedding in the next slide because it's basically just little pieces of wood and it's not that comfortable. Your hamster's going to be living and sleeping in this. You don't want them to sleep in aspen or pine. Not only do you want to avoid aspen or pine bedding, but you also want to avoid bathing your hamster in water, using soap and water. Hamsters have natural oils in their fur, and if you bathe them in soap and water, it strips them of those natural oils. And not only that, but they can also get really sick if they get too cold, and it can cause respiratory issues. So instead, you want to get calcium-free reptile sand or children's play sand. This is what I use. You want to avoid bath powder because it's too dusty and can cause respiratory and breathing issues. And you also want to avoid calcium sand because it's too rough and can damage their coat. You also want to avoid waking your hamsters up because if you didn't already know, hamsters are nocturnal and they like to sleep during the day, which means they have the lovely ability to keep you up all night. But even though your hamster keeps you up at night, you don't want to keep him up while he's trying to sleep during the day. You also want to avoid housing hamsters together. This is the biggest mistake I see in when people usually own hamsters. They usually put 2 hamsters together because you think they want a friend, but really they like to be alone. They're solitary and very territorial. This picture is of Tom and Jerry when I first got them. They used to cuddle together. They were from the same litter. They were siblings. They grew up together. You'd think they'd be fine. No, they tried to kill each other. Jerry got very territorial, and I had to separate them. Tom actually ended up losing like 2 claws in a hamster fight. So please don't house your hamsters together. It's really bad for them and really stressful. So now that you have a cage for your hamster and bedding, you want to have a hamster now. So I'm going to show you how to tame a hamster. But you first want to know where to get it from. I'd recommend getting it from an animal shelter because a bunch of hamsters are usually dumped there because people don't want them anymore and they don't know how to care for them. And pet stores are trash in general, so I'd recommend getting it from an animal shelter instead. When you first get your hamster, he's probably going to come in a box, so you want to put the box in the cage and let him come out on his own so he can take time to get comfortable in his new cage. You also want to avoid touching him or trying to pick him up for about a week so he has time to get comfortable in his new environment. Now to form a bond with your hamster, you can try hand feeding seeds, shown here, Tom modeling yet again. You can try hand feeding seeds. If he doesn't take it, you can just drop the seed and leave it on the ground. And once he's comfortable taking it from your fingers, you can try moving it up your hand. That way, he'll try climbing up on your hand and he can get more comfortable being held. Now I want to close by saying and showing you how much proper care can make a difference. This is Rafiki. This first picture is when I first got him from a friend. He was kept in a cage that was way too small for him with a wheel that was literally the same size as him. I still have no idea how he ran on it. And as you can see, he just looks really sad, unhealthy, and depressed. But in these next two pictures, this was after he was in my care and had a much bigger cage and had plenty of space like he needed. And as you can see, he's a lot happier and healthier in these pictures. Today I showed you what cage to get your hamster, what toys to get your hamster, what to avoid with your hamster, and how to tame your hamster. So remember, just because it says it's hamster safe doesn't mean it's actually good for your hamsters. Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you for listening to me.